So now next we have Sarah Evans, who's the Business and Growth and Consultancy Director at Cwmpas. And Sarah joined Cwmpas about 3 years ago and has overseen the development of commercial activities, and it's grown and grown and grown. She's in the field of social value, digital transformation, social care and learning and development, only a small things, a big agenda in other words. And she's led a variety of different projects, including working with the public sector bodies, like you were just suggesting, in Wales to review commissioning and procurement and other aspects of it. So Sarah is also a senior lecturer and researcher, leading European social enterprise development projects and topics such as internationalization of social enterprise and the role of minority ethnic women in the social business sector. Really important work there. She grew up and lives in rural mid-Wales, amongst the sheep, I guess, and plays an active role with the local farming community. Absolutely brilliant. And sitting on the regional board of NFU Mutual, being a trustee of Citizens Advice Bureau in Powys. So she may be able to tell us more about what Powys is doing as well. Sarah, thank you very much for coming, and you've got about 10 minutes to speak. Thank you so much.
Oh, diolch yn fawr, Jackie. Thank you very much, Jackie. And Prynhawn da pawb, good afternoon, everyone. So great to see so many of you have stayed with us to the end of this session. I think my role really is to try and bring everything together today, and I feel really honoured to be here, especially as Jackie said. I'm from Mid Wales. I've grown up and still live quite close to Newtown, so it feels a real honour. And as Liz said, we did learn about Robert Owen in school, and we do need to get that message further. So just reflecting, maybe a good place to start is, some of the work that we did do with Claire's and some of the themes that were coming up on that, because I think it really links quite closely to some of the work that Mark referred to that has now informed government in terms of moving forward. As Sarah said, this PSB approach, this public service board approach, was something different of bringing not only the local authorities and the health boards together, but we're also bringing together the universities and the housing associations and looking at how, when they were working together and thinking about spend together, that things could look really different. And that worked quite differently in different places, and people had quite different agendas. So I think the one that I've seen really move forward and provoke debate is the work that's happened in the kind of West region that Sarah was referring to, with Howells Are and how they're shaping food procurement, and the same with the Gwent PSB in terms of, again, local food was a really big issue that came through there. And I think that's what now is sort of informing Welsh Government's work around local food strategy. And I think that really did follow on from that work. In Mid Wales, what we really saw was how they could work with the social business sector. How could they be commissioning and procuring differently? And again, that's work that's really moved forward, particularly with councils like, our two Mid Wales councils of Ceredigion and Powys. And, really pleased to say, I still feel there are still these small steps, but I think they are leading to something that could be big and look really, really different. So I just wanted to, bring in some reflection now and thinking of all of the variety of amazing speakers we've had this morning, and some of which have really blown my mind, I think with what Richard was telling us. Liz, I'd probably like to start with what you were telling us. One of the quotes that you put up on the screen was, "Good work, my man, ahead of your time." Well, that's a great reflection on this morning, I think. And, I think our focus at how do we get these big things done, and I think what's really come through are these small steps. And I think all of us in our role of being here this morning are starting to see how some of those small steps are evolving and are leading to opportunity to kind of create this change. This, I think, Sarah, you referred to this alternative of way of doing things. I really like what Mark talked about around this courage, innovation and persistence, and I think that's really starting to come through in some of those policies. And one that we're really involved in is this eliminating the profit in the children's care sector. We've still got a lot of work to do, but we've already been speaking to the sector around cooperative models, how that can make things look very different for our children that are in those services. And there's been some great work. I don't know if anybody's seen the report that was done by some of the cooperatives and social enterprises based around Manchester, around just how those models make a real difference to the impact on younger children's life in the care sector. So I think, Sarah, I was going to come over to you now, and maybe just some of your reflections on what you've heard this morning, what maybe really applying it to some of the work we've done in Wales. But I know you've worked such a lot across the Northwest as well, some great work in areas like Kirklees, the Preston work. Just what are you thinking when you're reflecting on that and everything we've heard this morning?
I think for me, it's what I was just saying at the interval to that. I mean, sort of a large scale, that it's really important that we're remembering that there are alternatives. And I think sometimes in the work we've done, there's kind of almost like a bit of a light bulb moment. Sometimes people get it when you talk it through and you say, look, you've got a £500 million budget as a council. How much of that money goes into your most deprived neighbourhoods, and people think, oh, right. And suddenly the light bulb goes on and they start to realise that money is part of their way of delivering economic and social benefit to people. So there's sometimes that, but then sometimes it comes out of like kind of a sense of impressed very much. Where they realised after the financial crash, they'd been doing a deal to try and get a shopping centre, a big investor to invest in a local shopping centre. The financial crash hit. The whole thing fell apart, and they suddenly were at that moment like, what are we doing? Why are we trying to do deals with big capital where we have, none of the kind of cards on our side? We're trying to do something in the public interest. We're dealing with people who are only interested in private interest. This is not a way to run a good local economy. And that was a kind of a light bulb moment for them, which then switched their direction, and they started to think much more deliberately about using public expenditure, but also building local cooperatives, building social enterprise, and working with their local people in a way which is focused on growing the economy from the ground up. And I think the other kind of reflection that kind of comes to me from listening to the contributions today is that point, that Mark Jefford said about persistence and courage and innovation. And I think there's a lot of the legislative pieces are in place to do this work, and what the big sort of change that we need often is that being prepared to stick your neck out, to try something different, and to persuade other people. And I think that's often the bit that we don't have. And I think sometimes with good reason, given the levels of austerity, have pulled a lot of people out of the public sector, and have really kind of created a huge amount of disillusionment. But you still see people sticking their head up and doing something different and being prepared to take a risk. And I think that for me, I think those messages from Mark Jefford really kind of resonate with me in terms of wealth building and all the work that we've been talking about this morning.
Yeah, I think that's great, Sarah. And I'm going to come to you now, Jackie. Maybe just say, are we seeing that in our public sector, in our local authorities now? There's always been that fear factor of doing something different, of that sticking your head above the parapet, as it were. I think I'm starting to see people willing to work cooperatively to try to start things different. As a local councillor, would you agree?
Yeah, I think so. Cardiff is a huge city. I mean, for Wales, obviously it's the largest city. It's not a huge city. That's a silly thing to say, sorry. But it's, I think it's a consequence of having progressive politics. And I don't necessarily mean Welsh Labour, or Labour in the pure political sense, but progressive politics meaning we've had in the 2010 Equality Act, the socio-economic duty lay dormant within the UK, but that's come into effect. So for me, the natural consequence of that is it's a socio-economic duty, i.e. poverty and race, and all of those things working together to try and do something about that. The equality aspect, that if I can say, the children, the young people we're talking about, that's the effect of it. And the only way to do something about the deprivation is to work together. It's just the only way, especially if you have a very hostile government that doesn't want that to happen at all. So it's progressive politics for people, led by people, in order to change communities. And local authorities are at the forefront of that, and they have to do more. And we have to do much more in Cardiff as well. It can't just all be about big ticket items, because they don't help the woman and the child who is going on the public transport with the pram, to put it bluntly.
Christopher, can I bring you in now? I can see you've got your hand up.
Thank you very much, Sarah. My question to you, and very happy if Sarah Longlands wishes to chip in as well, but can we bring together, as I see it, three parts that don't always naturally come together? Co-ops, because I think a lot of us seem to believe in co-ops as part of the solution for inclusivity. Trade unions, who believe in public services but are not completely sure about co-ops. And then the public, who we have to sell this change in philosophy to in order to bring people with us. I'm just wondering, do we need a sympathetic Welsh government to kickstart the process? That's a bit top down, but via procurement and other ways. So I just wonder what your thoughts are about that. I know that's ideal for Cwmpas to think about.
Yeah, I think we're starting to see maybe some of that happening anyway. I think that people are wanting, I think cooperation really comes across in some of the, particularly post-COVID. I really believe some of that is starting to happen, and I think that's the way that a lot of my colleagues at Cwmpas, and through the work I'm out doing with Claire's at the moment in a county like Neath Talbot, we're starting to see those changes. But they are realising they've got a lot of work to do as a local authority. That's not just going to happen overnight. They're talking about how they're procuring and spending locally, but you've got to have those building blocks, as Mark called it, those foundations. You can't have that aspiration without having, you've got your role as a local authority to be developing that cooperative sector and to be telling the public what you're trying to do. And I think sometimes it's those messages, Christopher, that maybe aren't coming out that well. So I think there's change, but it's not quite there in terms of bringing everybody together. Do you want to add to that, Sarah?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting challenge, and I was struck by what Liz was saying about young people, about that point about the economics of the debate. It doesn't necessarily resonate, and I think there's a job of work to be done there, really, to give people a sense that the economy is not something over here. It's part of all. It's all of us, and I think we're fed a very narrow interpretation of what the economy is, and actually it's all around us. Wealth is here, flowing invisibly, and I think just trying to, I guess, something about kind of raising that kind of collective consciousness of this is our money, this is our collective wealth, and we have we need to be able to develop the agency to get hold of it, and to use it for the public interest. So I think there's a bit of work to do that for all of us interested in this space.
Chair, I'm going to hand back to you because I think we've kind of exhausted our 10 minutes.
Oh, thank you so much. That was really interesting, because having conversations is really important. So we've got one question, but that'll be, I think, the last question then, because we're at the maximum of time. So Ian, would you like to ask a very quick question if you can, please?
I'll do my best. I've been very concerned, and this is a bit of a co-op sort of culture thing, that social enterprise and co-ops are can be very different. So my recent experience has been involved in a big social enterprise that is involved in health, that started out as a partnership between the
Can you make it really quick, because otherwise we've run out of time. We've got 1 minute left.
The nature of this big social enterprise has completely changed. So it's now something very different from what it was. It's now a contract winning machine, and people have been basically elbowed out. Now, that wouldn't have happened with a co-op. Is that a danger?
I could come in on that really quickly, Jackie, if I mean, to me, that's about extraction versus generative economics. And, you know, you can give yourself whatever name you want, but if you're operating in an extractive way, that's not what community wealth is about. So that's a really quick answer, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but we've run out of time now, and I want to respect Chris because otherwise David will tell me off, I'm sure. I want to thank everyone for coming, first of all, because without you, obviously, this event wouldn't happen, but also for all the wonderful speakers. I don't want to pick any one particular person because you all brought so much to the table or to the Zoom. But I also want to thank David and Chris for organising, and Jonathan in the background. And unfortunately, Laura was ill, so she couldn't make it today. And I wish her all the very, very best to getting better as well. Just keep doing what you're doing. Absolutely brilliant. Chris, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks ever so much, Jackie. Brilliant to have the ladies panel giving us so many thoughts and ideas about ways to go forward. There is an alternative, and we will keep talking about it. Brilliant to have it started by Mark Drakeford, who gave us the words courage, innovation, and persistence. And we will, and we shall. Myself and David will carry on. We want this annual Robert Owen Day, and your support for that would be fantastic. We've had support and help from Minister Jeremy Miles, who's put Robert Owen in the curriculum. And we want to let you know that we've got our next event taking place on the 1st of July, International Cooperators Day, when we've got another stellar panel, but more of that later on another occasion. This recorded presentation will be put into a series of presentations on YouTube. And finally, on this Eurovision Day, I was trying to work out how on earth I thank everybody in about 10 seconds. So I thought of a band who weren't Eurovision, and I'll thank you in that style. So we all remember, or some of us older people will remember Dave D, Dozy, Vicky, Mick and Titch. There we go. So I can now thank Mick, Mark, Richard, Jackie, Liz, Sarah, David and Jonathan. Thank you all, and goodbye.